debates and let people see things for themselves, then they just work on scaring people and sowing doubt. So here's what I want to say. This is really important. And I'm out here not because I'm running for anything, but because I want to protect my grandchildren's future. And my grandkids were raised to respect everybody, to love diversity, to want us to go forward together. They want everybody to have a chance. And their family motto is they were taught to be brave and be kind. And I want them to have that. And here's what I think is standing in the way. The Republicans are geniuses at sowing doubt and division. This woman's an alien. Trump's called her every name in the book, including a communist. Heck, there hadn't been any communists around in decades, but you know, it sounds bad. Yesterday accused the president and Kamala of providing over an administration that had turned 13,099, he added to the number, murderers loose on the American populace. Some of them came from the Congo. That sounds forbidding. Heart of darkness. And the people in both Congos in Africa went crazy. They said, we had never opened our jails and we sure had never sent anybody to America. He just made it up because it sounded scary. And they said, we know what happened. Then it turned out the truth started to trickle out. Always inconvenient for their campaign. So it turns out that that number, 13,099, contrary to what Mr. Trump said yesterday, was not the first time a federal number had been released. The border people do it on a regular basis. And that's the number of people who committed homicides of one kind or another, which is murder one, murder two, manslaughter, whatever, over 40 years. Including when Donald Trump was president. And he tried to load it all onto Kamala. Now, why did he do that? Because he's got to keep people from thinking for 13 more days. He's got to take the election away from them by distraction and division. Here's what I want you to know. People are legitimately concerned about cost of living. So here's the Trump argument. I was president for 2 years and the economy was great till COVID came along. That's not my fault. And we had no inflation. We've had all this inflation for the last 3 years, and it affects 100% of the people, so you have to vote for me and against her. Isn't that about it? Sounds compelling, except there are problems with it. Number one, every country with an advanced income had inflation because of COVID breaking the supply chains. We wanted to buy this, that, or the other thing, and our demand was up here and the supply was down here, and you know what happens when that happens? You get inflation. Second problem is Kamala Harris is the only candidate who has actually offered a plan to do something about it, and that is the most important thing. So I want you to tell everybody you can talk to between now and Election Day that if you look at food, housing, and fuel, here's her plan. Number one, with regard to food, the real problem is that most Americans now buy their food from big chains. And no state is big and strong enough to monitor all their practices. So she said, I used to be Attorney General of California. We had a no price gouging law that gave the state the power to look into it in California. Red Texas has one. Almost every state, red and blue, has it. But there's no national law. I'm going to pass a national law and have the Justice Department able to oversee what happens to food prices. It's a practical, simple thing. Everybody knows how to do the investigations. They know what to do. But she actually said, this is what I'll do. Trump said, we got a problem. I blame them. You have to be for me. She said, we got a problem. Let's do something about it. Same thing with housing. What happened with housing? When the crash happened way back in 2008, people started moving and couldn't make a living. It was especially pronounced where I just came from in Las Vegas, which had the third biggest economic collapse in the country then. And then when COVID hit, it happened all over again, and people were leaving where they were living. And what happened? A lot of these big financial institutions came in and swooped up the houses, bought them for nothing, and then when people wanted to rent or buy, the price was going through the roof because the economy was growing. But the people that needed to live there hadn't had any time to build up savings. So what did Kamala say? She said, we need to build more houses first because that will lower the cost with more competition. And here's how I'm going to build 3 million houses. Then she said, we ought to give people help in making down payments and deductions for rent payments or mortgages they otherwise couldn't afford. And we'll settle this thing down and make more affordable housing. What did her opponents say? You got to vote against her. We had inflation. What did she say? What are we going to do about it? Then he said, and look at what happened to gas prices while they were there. You got to vote against them. And she said, well, they screwed up the supply chain, but we're now producing more energy than we consume for the first time since the 1950s because this administration followed what they called an all-of-the-above strategy. Basically, natural gas, solar, wind, geothermal, you name it, and get everybody involved